This is Dottie. Say hello. She hates me. To my YouTube channel. This is actually my first ever video, so I'm going to try and keep this intro short because I have filmed it 2 times now and realised that I talk for England and it goes on for a very long time. But anyway, so I'm gonna start on this channel kind of combining the 2 things that I love the most. So obviously makeup is one of them because I am obsessed with makeup, and then there's true crime as well. Anyone who knows me knows that I am literally obsessed with true crime and like murder mysteries and crime documentaries, things like that. Literally just like the typical girl who's like, oh, I'm not normal, I like true crime. That's me. So yeah, I thought that I'd start doing true crime cases whilst doing my makeup. I have tried this once before and it was actually really hard to concentrate on talking and doing my makeup at the same time because I have like one brain cell, and if that's getting used by one thing, it's quite hard for me to do the other. But yeah, we're gonna give it a go today and see how that works out. So today I'm going to be talking about the Bobby Dunbar case, which is literally my favourite true crime case ever. Not a lot of people talk about it, so hopefully a lot of people who's watching this don't actually know about it that well. But yeah, I am literally obsessed with it. I think it was one of the first crime cases that I actually listened to, so I think that's why it's one of my favourites. But ever since then I've literally watched every documentary on it. BuzzFeed Unsolved did an episode on it and I really enjoyed that one, so if you want to watch that after this. It is quite interesting, and I think the 2 lads who do BuzzFeed Unsolved are really funny. Anyway, I'm getting off the point here. Yeah, the case. So it's about Bobby Dunbar, who was a 4-year-old boy who lived in America. I don't know how to say the place where he lived, so I'm not even going to try. I'm not even going to butcher it and offend everyone. But yeah, he lived in America. But he was, yeah, 4-year-old, and on August 23rd of 1912, yep, that's right, he was staying at a log cabin with his family and a few friends. He stayed with his brother Alonzo, his mum Lessie, and his dad Percy. They had a log cabin in Louisiana. I don't know if I've just said where the log cabin was, but if I didn't, it was in Louisiana. So they were there, and there was 11 of them in total, so there was a lot of family friends, and like I said, his mum and his brother was with him. So I think it was the first day of the trip. His dad had to leave for work, so Bobby kind of got a little bit upset that his dad had to leave for work, so we ended up having a little bit of a paddy like kids do, and he broke the little tie on his straw hat. Yeah, that becomes relevant later on. I'm not just telling you that he broke his straw hat for nothing. But yeah, his dad left for work, so then later on he asked his mum if he could go to the lake with a family friend called Paul Mizzy. Him and Paul Mizzy was actually like really close friends. Paul took Bobby horseback riding a lot when they were back at home, and Paul had a little nickname for Bobby as well, which was Heavy. Weird nickname. If anyone ever called me Heavy, we'd have a problem. So yeah, they decided to go to the lake, and quite a few of the boys ended up going to the lake with them, including his brother Alonzo. If I'm saying that wrong, I am actually really sorry, but that's how it's said on all the other videos, so I'm guessing so. A little bit later, they ended up getting called back for dinner because his mother, his mother Lessie was making dinner when they left, so they ended up having to come back. From here, the details kind of get a little bit fuzzy, so what I'm saying might not be the complete truth. There's a lot of kind of contradicting statements and things like that from everyone, but on most of the things that I saw, this is what it said. Like, this is the statements that cropped up the most. So yeah, just take everything I'm about to say with a little bit of a pinch of salt. Paul recalled putting Alonzo on his back and kind of like joking about with Bobby. He said, "Move out the way or I'll run you over," something along those lines. And it was just kind of like the jokey behaviour that them 2 had together. And then Bobby responded, and these are apparently like Bobby's last ever words, saying, "You can't do it, you ain't no bigger than me." And that's just kind of said to be in his character. Like, he said things like that a lot, and he joked a lot. He joked about with Paul a lot as well, so it's just like normal behaviour between them 2. 3 men then searched up the wagon trail to see if he'd kind of ran back trying to run to his dad. Do you know how his dad left for work? Some people thought that like he would try to follow his dad and go and get his dad. But they didn't end up finding him down there, but they did end up seeing his dad Percy coming back and told him that, you know, Bobby's gone missing, you might want to try and find your son. So Percy ran back to the cabin to try and find him. His wife ended up passing out. It sounded like it was a bit of a mess, which is understandable. So everyone tried searching around where they went back. Paul was kind of like one of the leaders of the search. He obviously felt guilty because one of the boys who was in his care, and also like his favourite who was really close with, has just disappeared out of his sight. So they went searching up the lake, and I don't know if this was like normal back in them times, but they wondered if he'd kind of like fell in the lake. So they threw explosives into the lake to see, I don't really know what they were trying to achieve with that, but like maybe the move the water out of the way, they can see at the bottom when it explodes, see if he's there, I don't know. But yeah, they did that, and then they got like fishing hooks with fishing hooks at the bottom, trying to scrape that along the bottom, see if they could bring up any bodies, because they wondered like maybe he drowned in this lake. However, the straw hat that I mentioned, this is where it comes into the story. They then got a straw hat, and they tested if a straw hat that had a broken tie would float on the lake, because obviously if he drowned, something might be floating and give it away. So they put it on, and they saw that the hat actually does float for quite a while. And obviously it wasn't long, it didn't take them long to realise that Bobby was missing. So if he had fallen in the lake or he had drowned, his hat they'd still be able to see his hat. So like, he'd clearly not been in the lake. Then people kind of began to assume that maybe he'd been eaten by an animal, which, you know, 4-year-old boy, maybe. But yeah, so they kind of thought that he had been eaten by an alligator. So a few of the men then actually started cutting up alligators to check inside to see if he was like actually in an alligator. Later on in the search, his mum, Lessie, actually got really sick with how much stress she was under trying to find her son. So they all had to return home. However, Peter, that isn't his name is Paul. Why do I keep calling this man Peter? So anyway, Paul and 3 of the other men actually stayed to look for Bobby. They realised that he wasn't in the lake and he probably hadn't been eaten by an alligator. So they kind of went walking around trying to find him, and they saw some barefoot footprints in kind of like the mud near some abandoned train tracks. Is that what they're called? Train tracks. I think it's train tracks. But near there, you know what I mean. So they kind of like found that a bit weird, because by the way, he didn't have any shoes on. Didn't mention that, but he didn't have any shoes on. So they found these bare footprints, and then they started walking along the train tracks, and they saw some kind of stragglers. So they wondered if maybe he'd been kidnapped, because I mean, he's not in the lakes, he's not inside an alligator, so where else would he be? Kidnapped. So they then started questioning all the people who were on the train tracks, you know, asking, have you took my child or a child? Obviously everyone was like, no, what you on about, I don't just kidnap children. On August 26th, then the authorities of where was it, Louisiana, contacted the police in New Orleans, which I'm not the best at geography at the best of times, but I don't think that's close to Louisiana. I mean, it might be, but like in terms of, I don't really understand. So they thought that he'd maybe been kidnapped, and he could be anywhere at this point because he's clearly not in Louisiana or anywhere near there. So the police kind of sent out posters and leaflets and everything with like a description of Bobby. The description said something along the lines of like what he looked like. He had no shoes on, he had a straw hat. He actually had a scar on his left foot, on one of his feet. On one of his feet he had a scar. So that was kind of like easy identifiable. So there was just kind of like leaflets with his description everywhere so that people could see. And Peter, the man who, you know, went on the walk with him, actually went down to New Orleans himself to hand out leaflets and flyers and things like that and speak to some news people, which is a good idea because this man is definitely feeling a little bit guilty, because if I was looking after a child, I feel guilty when they fall over and hurt themselves, let alone when they disappear off the face of the earth. So he is trying his absolute best to, you know, get him back. So yeah, after a while, they then kind of put up a reward for anyone who can bring back Bobby alive to the parents, and there'll be kind of like no questions asked. You just like drop off the child and go about your life as if nothing happened. The reward was $1,000, which back then in like 1912, I'm guessing it's still the same year. Back then in 1912, it was a lot of money. Today it is round about kind of like $22,000, which is a hefty amount of money. So this reward was actually put together by everyone who lived in the town that Bobby lived in. So everyone kind of like chipped in together for this reward. However, after 8 months, there was literally like no leads anywhere. Like no one had a clue where this child was. And if no one's coming forward for £1,000, which is basically 22 grand, no one knows anything. So they gave back all of the money that was put together. They gave it back to everyone who donated it. However, just quite soon after all the money had been returned, the first ever lead came up. I think it was a tip on some phone line thing to say that a man named William Walters had been spotted with a boy who fit the description of Bobby, like perfectly. However, his foot was covered in mud, so they couldn't actually see the foot that had the scar on it to, you know, tell if it had a scar and if it was him. Obviously, the police, you know, found William Walters, and he gave some pretty inconsistent answers about who the boy was and who he belonged with. At first he said that it was his child, and then he said that it was his sister's child, and then it said that it was his brother's child. So basically no one had a clue who this child was and who it belonged to. He just had it, and that was pretty weird. Like, if you have a child in your possession, you normally know whose it is. So the police didn't at this point have enough to kind of like bring him in for anything, really. He just had a child and he didn't know where it was from. I mean, nowadays I think, you know, you get brought in because you have a child that looks like someone who's been missing. But then some people in the town, in the community, saw him actually whipping the child. So then the police like had enough to bring him in and detain him. And at this time they then started to examine the boy to check if, you know, it was Bobby. It was at this point that they noticed that he did actually have a scar on his foot, which matched with the description of Bobby's, and basically he had another little mole like here on his chest, which again, Bobby also had that, which at this point it's not looking good. It is looking like it is Bobby. So they bring his mum Lessie and his father Peter, and they plan to come down and check if this boy is theirs themselves. However, when they are questioning kind of like the boy, asking like, hello, who are you? The boy literally gave no answer. Like, he just wasn't communicating at all with anyone. So this was a bit weird as well. So they're asking William, like, come on, whose boy is this? And why does he look like a missing child? And he's like, right, okay, it's my brother's mistress's child, and she let me have him. She like lent me the child to take him out wherever. So basically he's trying to say that like, this isn't the missing child. I'm meant to have him in my custody. His mum knows that he's with me and everything is fine. However, everything was not fine. They rang the mother of this child. Her name was Julia. She was a single mum. I'm not too sure where the father actually was, like where his brother was, but it just said that she was a single mother, so I'm guessing he's not in the picture. And when they spoke to Julia, Julia actually said that, yeah, I did let him take my child out for a little bit, but he was only supposed to be gone for a few days, and I have literally not seen him in months. So either way, this man is in a bit of trouble, because he's now claiming that this child is his brother's mistress's, and he was allowed to take the child, and he had like all permission from everyone that he could have the child. However, now the mother is saying that he was only supposed to have him for a few days and she's not seen him in months, which is a little bit weird. Also, her child is called Bruce Anderson. So this child is now getting a little bit confused. We don't know whether it's Bruce Anderson and we don't know whether it's Bobby Dunbar. There was a little bit of kind of like, when I was reading up about it, people were kind of like, well, he's obviously going to say that the child is his brother's sisters. Incorrect. His brother's mistresses, because if it finds out that this child is actually Bobby, it is punishable by death. It is a capital punishment. Obviously, kidnapping was not taken lightly back then, nor is it now, but I mean, you don't die if you kidnap someone. So obviously he didn't want to die, so people were saying that he was just saying that it was this child. Basically, he was meant to have Bruce Anderson either way. No matter who this child is, he was meant to have Bruce Anderson for a few days, and it's now been a few months. However, this child is looking like it's Bobby. So where is Bruce Anderson? If this is Bobby, where's Bruce Anderson? So Bobby's mother and father actually came down and saw him, and the child had literally like no reaction to his mother at all. Didn't be like, oh my god, mum, I've not seen you in so long. Claimed that he didn't know who this woman was. At first, Lessie was kind of like, okay, so just for context, this is Bobby and this is Bruce. Yeah, because I didn't actually explain that they look like each other, so there you go. Bathed him, don't know why, that is a bit weird, but yeah, she bathed him and she saw that he had the scar, and she saw everything in person, and she said that she just knew that that child was hers. Okay, so just for context, this is Bobby and this is Bruce. Yeah, because I didn't actually explain that they look like each other, so there you go. So yeah, so now Lessie is kind of like completely convinced that this is her child. She knows that this is Bobby. So then Julia comes over and visits Bobby, Bruce, the child, and the child also then has like no kind of, the same as what it was like with Lessie. He didn't really react when he saw her or anything like that. He just kind of just didn't really do anything. But she said that she just knew on like her mother's instinct, she just knew that that child was hers and it was Bruce, and she just knew it. However, at first, just like Lessie, she was a little bit confused as well. She was like, I don't know, is it? But then she said that she just knew that it was hers. So then obviously when she came, she went into the town of where Bobby has been missing for this long time, because Bobby was now there with his family. So there was massive celebrations all over the street. Bobby was like riding down the town during this celebration on a fire truck covered in flowers. So that's a bit strange. So obviously when you come into a town like this claiming that that boy is yours, you're not going to get a very nice welcome. So people just wasn't really on her side. They were convinced that this was Bobby as much as his mum was. So she didn't really stand a chance anyway. But she said that it was her boy, which is fair enough, because if you think it's your boy, you think it's your boy. And then the newspapers kind of started writing articles about Julia, saying how all the past with her children and everything. I'm not going to get into that because it is a long story and I don't have the effort to start rambling on about that, because this will be a very long video. But yeah, they started going into her past with all of her other children who got taken off her, or I think one of them died, I'm not too sure. But yeah, she had a bad past with the rest of her children, and now this one has just like disappeared as well. So poor woman has not had the best of lives with her children, and now she's getting ripped to shreds in the newspapers in this town as well, and no one is on her side. So they kind of like bring up the fact that she wasn't too sure if it was hers at first, which I think is a little bit unfair, because Lessie also had that you know, first reaction when she saw him, and she didn't get anything written about her in the papers. But yeah, the papers weren't exactly kind to her. So backtracking to how Bobby, Bruce, whoever he is, didn't react to Julia when she came, it's also, we need to bear in mind that he has now been living with Lessie and Peter for a very... Is that his name? I think his name's Percy. Why did I just call him Peter? No. He's now been living with Lessie and Percy. Why have I just called him Percy again? Oh, his name is Percy. What? So we kind of need to bear in mind that he has been living with Lessie and Percy for quite a little bit of time now, and during this time that he was living there, they had bought him a pony and a bike and loads of goodies and things like that, which can be seen in kind of like two ways. It can be seen as either they're trying to bribe him to stay, like, even if you think you're not my son, I'll buy you loads of nice things, you're gonna have a great life if you stay here. I doubt, even if they were bribing him, I doubt they kind of said it to him like, I'll buy you loads of things if you stay here. But if you're a child that's, I'm guessing he's about 5 now, and you come into a house of people who are literally obsessed with you, love you, buy you a pony, buy you a bike, buy you everything you want, you're going to want to stay there. So, but then on the other hand, they could think, oh, I've lost this kind of time with my son, I thought I was never going to get him back, I'll buy him all these nice things, try and make him feel better and love me for losing him. So it's just kind of like two ways. We don't really know which way to believe at the minute. So even if he did see Julia and didn't kind of react to her, and she actually was his mum, at this point I probably wouldn't react either. If someone's buying me a pony and a bike and my mum let me leave with a man, I would also not react. So yeah, at this point it had also been 15 months since Julia had seen Bruce, which means that like Julia had been missing Bruce for a lot longer than Lessie and Percy had been missing Bobby, which is a bit tight. Okay, so it's also important to note, please ignore the fact that I've just turned into an umplumper. We will fix this with a little bit of cream highlight. But yeah, it's important to know that at this point, wow. At this point, Julia had been missing Bruce for 15 months, which is a lot longer than what Lessie and Percy was missing Bobby. So she understands that, like, they're missing them, but at the same time, like, her son's been gone a long time. It's a bit tight. Okay, so I've now, like, flew through my base because I was, like, I'm, like, nearly finished the case and I was like nowhere near done with my makeup. Also, ignore the fact that I look like a tangerine. I take my pictures for Instagram when I do my makeup, and the darker that my foundation is, obviously it looks better on camera, and this is what I am when I'm tanned. I'm just not tanned at the minute. So when I raise my hand, like, yeah, I know there's a massive colour difference. Please don't come for me in the comments, because I know that it will come and it will happen. But no, it's just for Instagram. Please hold fire, please don't hurt me. Anyway, moving on. I'm just going to do my brows now, and then I'll literally just need to put my lashes on and do some lips and put some highlight on, obviously, and then I'm done. But I'm going to stop talking at 100 miles an hour now and just get on with it. So William went on trial, obviously, because he was found with Bobby, and it was then kidnapping because he wasn't meant to have that child. So he was actually found guilty of kidnapping and he got sentenced to life in prison. However, 2 months into his jail sentence, William's verdict got overturned and he actually got an appeal and a retrial. His appeal went through and he got a retrial, basically, was what I was trying to say. But yeah, anyway, as for Bobby, at age 18 he met a girl named Marjorie. They ended up having 4 children, lived a very happy life, and they got married in 1935, and he unfortunately passed away in 1966. So yeah, he actually did live his whole life as Bobby. He didn't kind of like question it as different. He just lived as Bobby. However, in 1999, this story ain't stopping. Like, you think it was done? Oh no, there is still more to come. 1999, his granddaughter, Margaret Dunbar Cartwright, actually kind of like was really interested in her past and really wanted to kind of like get to the bottom of it. She always like heard stories, and her grandma always told her about, you know, like the mystery in the family. She was clearly interested by it, as would I be. Imagine that, like, your granddad could potentially just be a completely different person, and your name is just like not been yours for your whole life. Pretty weird. So obviously she did a little bit of digging, and her dad gave her kind of like this massive. So apparently my storage is like full on before. This is a bit ridiculous. I'm also sweating because the ring light is right in my face. So we're just gonna literally fly through this. I don't know where it's just stopped me. I'm also gonna fix the lighting because that's ugly. But yeah, so I'm literally just gonna try and fly through all of this now. But yeah, her daughter was kind of like, his granddaughter I mean, was obsessed with the case, and had obviously that scrapbook full of like all of the newspapers and everything, and there was a cartoon in one of the newspapers, and it was kind of like an old man sat on a chair with a boy on his knee, and it says 50 years later, and he's holding a newspaper with all of like the cases of what happened, like all of the newspaper articles of what happened, and it says something along the lines of will we ever know if that was our real name, or something like that. You can actually find that newspaper article on Google. I'm not editedly skilled enough to put that on here, but like if I can I will. But yeah, and it was kind of just weird. It kind of affected her a bit weirdly because that is her now, like it's her looking on it. But anyway, so she then decided to do a DNA test with her dad, who was Bobby Dunbar Jr., and one of her great uncles, who was Bobby Dunbar's brother, Alonzo, his son. Yeah. So she did a DNA test comparing their two DNAs. So Bobby Dunbar's son and Bobby Dunbar's like actual brother, Alonzo, his son's DNA. So yeah, they did a test between them two, and a lot of kind of like controversy got brought up about that. Like everyone was saying just leave the past in the past, like why do you have to dig into it, just leave it alone. They didn't have anything to compare it to the Andersons, so like they'd only be able to find out if he was actually a Dunbar or not. Like they wouldn't be able to say, oh well, it must have been Bruce Anderson, which I mean, like if he comes back negative, I mean like he isn't a Dunbar, then who else will he be? He's gonna be the Anderson. So the results came back, and to everyone's surprise, he wasn't Bobby Dunbar. All this time, he wasn't a Dunbar. The results didn't match. So everyone was just kind of a little bit shocked, and like I was expecting it, let's be honest. But obviously they've gone all this time living as if that is their name, and it's just not. So, but yeah. And then Bobby Dunbar's son, Bobby Dunbar Jr. Who do I think I am? Jr. Actually said that he recalled having a conversation with his father about it and asking like, how do you actually know that you are Bobby Dunbar? And he recalls his father saying, I know who I am and I know who you are and nothing else matters. Which I find to be a little bit creepy. Basically saying, I mean, it's supposed to be cute. It's supposed to be like, oh, I know who I am and you know who you are and no one else matters. Like, it doesn't matter what anyone else says. But I kind of take it as like, I know who you are and you should know who you are. So like, I got a pony, it doesn't matter. Basically, that's what he's saying. So yeah, there's a lot of kind of like conspiracy behind all of this, like all of the conspiracy stories, like how the hell did that man get Bobby then? Like where is Bobby? I mean, how, like it's just a bit weird. So I'm not going to get into the conspiracies, mainly because there's so many. And I just didn't want to choose a few, but in my next video, if you want me to talk about the conspiracies at the end of kind of like this, then I will do, just let me know, because they are interesting. There's just a lot to get through and I couldn't choose my favourites. I mean, I should put some lashes on now, so I'm going to do that and then I'll get back to you. So yeah, that is actually, my eyelash is coming off, I think. Yes. So yeah, that is actually the end of the case. No one actually knows to this day who the real Bobby Dunbar is, where he is, what happened. So yeah, this is a little bit of an unsolved one. I hope you all enjoyed it though. I actually really enjoyed filming this. I have been trying to get the hang of YouTube now for quite a while, and I've kind of been stressing myself out because I've not really found something that I enjoy making, but this I have definitely enjoyed talking about this. But if you do have any cases that you want me to talk about next time in a video, leave them down below in the comments or message me, anything like that, and I'll try and get around to them all. I have got a few cases that I do want to talk about. I'm going to try and stay away from like the really popular ones like Madeleine McCann and things like that, because everyone has spoke about it, everyone has done about them. Like, there's no point me adding another video to the long list of people who have spoke about Madeleine McCann. So yeah, I hope you've all enjoyed, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!